There comes a moment, not always loud, not always visible, when something stirs inside you. A whisper beneath the noise of the world, a gentle nudge against the walls you've built. It's not a cry for help, it's a call to remembrance. Not a plea to become something new, but an invitation to return to what you've always been. The real you was never gone, just buried. Buried beneath expectations you inherited. Buried beneath stories you were told. Buried beneath disappointments you never deserved. Like the sun behind the clouds, your true self never ceased to shine, was only momentarily obscured. The soul cannot vanish. It can only be veiled. We have been conditioned to forget. We were taught to listen to voices louder than our own. We were encouraged to trade our truth for approval, our joy for performance, our presence for productivity. And so we buried the softness. We hid the stillness. We abandoned the innocence. Not because we were broken, but because we thought that's what survival demanded. But let me tell you something simple and eternal. You were never meant to live a life of disguise. You were never meant to become a copy of anyone else's dream. You were born in truth, formed in love, and destined for freedom. And though you've wandered far, nothing essential has been lost. The gold is still in you. It has only been waiting for you to remember where you placed the shovel. You are not the names you were called. You are not the roles you perform. You are not the fears you carry. These are layers, masks, echoes. But beneath them lives something eternal and untouched. Something the world did not give you and therefore cannot take away. There is a light in you that predates your pain. There is a wholeness in you that survived the fragmentation. There is a love in you that has nothing to prove. And when you begin to listen, to truly listen, you'll hear the voice of your soul reminding you, I am still here. I always was. We bury ourselves under layers of striving and shame because the ego teaches us that who we are is not enough. It shouts, be more, do more, win more. And so we become performers in our own lives, applauded for the act, yet exhausted from the pretending. The tragedy is not that we forget, we all forget. The tragedy is believing the forgetting is final. But it's not. You are allowed to remember. You are allowed to put down the performance. You are allowed to stop running and sit in your own stillness. You are allowed to say, I miss who I was before the world told me who to be. That's not weakness. That's the beginning of spiritual courage. Healing does not begin when we change. Healing begins when we become honest about where we are. When we say, I'm tired of wearing masks that don't fit. I'm tired of living someone else's life while my own soul waits patiently behind the curtain. You do not need to become anything. You need only to uncover. You do not need to seek what you already are. You need only to see what you have buried. The acorn does not strive to become an oak. It simply surrenders to the truth of what it is. And in that surrender, everything it is destined to be unfolds naturally, organically, miraculously. The same is true for you. Your soul is not interested in your resume. It does not keep score of your failures. It does not measure your worth and productivity. It knows nothing of scarcity or shame. Your soul is interested in one thing, truth. And truth cannot be manufactured, it can only be revealed. So breathe. And in this breath, allow the dust to settle. Feel beneath the performance. Feel beneath the guilt. Feel beneath the should and the should have. Do you feel it? That flicker of aliveness? That is you. The real you, still warm, still awake, still whole. Not the version of you molded by society. Not the version of you that fears rejection. Not the version of you trying to earn worth. but the version that just is. The child who once played without apology, the spirit who once loved without fear, the soul who once trusted without evidence. The real you is not broken. The real you is not confused. The real you is not behind. The real you is free. And all the pain you've walked through, all the betrayal, all the heartbreak, all the disappointment, they did not erase you. They revealed where you stopped believing in your own light. But that light, it never stopped believing in you. There is something holy about reclaiming what you buried. There is something sacred about meeting yourself again after years of pretending. It is the most intimate reunion. The ego will resist. It will panic at the thought of losing control. It will whisper lies to keep you in hiding. But you are not here to obey fear. You are here to dissolve it with awareness. You were not born to live in defense. You were born to live in alignment. You were not born to compete. You were born to connect. You were not born to hustle for worth. You were born worthy. Every time you return to yourself, the universe sings. Every time you say yes to stillness, the divine listens. Every time you dare to feel instead of suppress, you melt another layer of illusion. You don't need more fixing. You need more remembering. You don't need to be taught your worth. You need to unlearn everything that made you doubt it. You don't need a map. You are the destination. And you've been waiting for your own arrival. Keep going inward. Keep digging. Every buried truth is waiting for your permission to rise. And when it does, you'll weep not because you found something new, but because you finally return to what has always been yours. And the beautiful paradox is this. The moment you stop chasing who you think you're supposed to be, the real you comes forth with grace, not effort. There is no struggle in being what is already true. There is only a quiet softening like a flower unfolding to the sun, not because it was forced, but because it was ready. You have been ready longer than you realize. You have carried the keys while believing you were locked out. You have sung the melody of your soul in whispers, afraid someone might hear your joy and judge it. But now is the season of returning. Now is the time for shedding the heavy cloaks of pretending. Now is the sacred invitation to live unburdened by the expectations of others and unashamed of the depth of your light. There is no medal for dimming your spirit to keep others comfortable. There is no reward for betraying your truth in the name of being accepted by people who don't even know who they are. You are not here to be understood by the asleep. You are here to awaken. And awaken you must, not in rebellion, but in remembrance, not in anger, but in peace. Because the real you is not here to fight for identity. It already knows its origin is divine. The real you is not in scarcity, nor confusion, nor desperation. The real you breathes in harmony with all that is. Imagine for a moment that you were never taught to abandon yourself. Imagine that no one ever told you to earn love, to fear failure, to doubt your worth. Who would you be today? You'd be bold, soft, limitless. You'd be unapologetically radiant. You'd be free. But even though the world did teach you otherwise, and even though you did forget, it's not too late. Because what is real cannot be destroyed. Truth may be delayed, but it is never denied. And the soul waits patiently, lovingly, as you remove each mask, each wound, each lie. It waits without judgment. It waits without rush. Because your soul remembers who you are, even when you do not. It's why the ache has never left. Not the ache of loss, but the ache of remembering. That quiet longing you feel, it's not a weakness. It's the voice of truth calling you home. And as you begin to answer that call, not with panic, but with presence, you start to feel life differently. You notice the sacred in the simple. You hear silence not as emptiness, but as clarity. You look in the mirror and see someone you're finally willing to meet, not fix. And that's when it begins. The rebirth. Not loud, not dramatic, but deep. A returning, layer by layer, to the essence beneath it all. You realize that your worth was never up for negotiation. You realize that love was never something you had to win. You realize that your sensitivity was never a flaw, it was your compass. And the more you honor what you used to hide, the more you shine without effort. This is not arrogance. This is reverence. This is not ego. This is alignment. You stop asking, how do I become enough? And start asking, what have I believed that made me forget I already am? And like a snake shedding its skin, you release the roles, the people-pleasing, the striving, the proving. You lay them down gently, with gratitude for how they served you when you didn't yet know your truth. Then you step forward, not into a new identity, but into the space you once feared was too sacred for you to inhabit. This is where you begin to live, truly live, not in reaction to the world, but in response to your spirit. Not from wounded identity, but from remembered wholeness. And you see now that healing was never about becoming something different. Healing was about revealing who was always beneath the pain. The innocent one, the quiet one, the true one. And now you are ready to let that one speak, to let that one breathe, to let that one lead. There will be moments when the old story tries to pull you back. It will tell you you're not ready, that you're not healed enough, that you're still too broken. But listen closely. That voice is not your soul. It's the echo of your conditioning. And echoes may sound real, but they have no substance. They cannot touch you unless you stop and give them meaning. You don't need to argue with the noise. You just need to walk forward anyway, eyes open, heart steady, spirit rooted. And when you do, when you walk with the quiet knowing of your wholeness, life begins to rearrange itself around your truth. You attract what honors you. You align with what nurtures you. You magnetize what speaks your soul's language. This is not magic. This is resonance. This is the law of harmony of the universe. Responds not to what you pretend to be, but to who you actually are. And when who you are is no longer hidden beneath shame, no longer buried beneath fear, you become a lighthouse. Not because you shout, not because you strive, but because you exist fully, freely, and fiercely as yourself. And that is the greatest service you can offer the world, your authenticity. Not a performance, not a projection, but your living truth. Because when you stop hiding, you give others permission to stop hiding too. When you forgive yourself for forgetting, you give others the courage to remember. And when you live with your heart uncovered, you become the healing you once waited for. So let this be your sacred reclamation. Let this be the breath where you say, I am no longer a stranger to myself. Let this be the moment where you stop digging through the rubble of who you used to be and instead rise clean and whole from the silence of your becoming. Because the real you is not waiting at the end of your achievements. The real you is not waiting in the mirror of someone else's approval. The real you is not waiting on the other side of perfection. The real you is now, right here, beneath every false layer, beneath every buried truth, beneath every mask, alive, whole, sacred, and ready. Not ready to chase, not ready to perform, but ready to live as who you were before the forgetting. Because the real you was never gone, just buried. And now, you remember. There is a divine rhythm to awaken in it does not come in a rush, but in ripples. One realization leads to another. One truth uncovers the next. And slowly, your life becomes less about running from pain and more about moving toward presence. You no longer seek escape, you seek alignment. You no longer try to numb the ache, you listen to it. Because now you understand the ache is sacred. It is not a flaw in your design. It is a compass pointing you back to where you buried your joy. And isn't that beautiful? That even in your suffering, there was guidance. That even in your confusion, there was wisdom. You thought you were lost, but you were actually being led. Not away from yourself, but deeper into yourself. The breakdowns, the betrayals, the silent nights, they were not detours. They were doorways. Doorways into depth. Doorways into truth. Doorways into the only thing that ever really mattered, your soul's remembrance. And when the remembrance comes, it does not come with fireworks. It comes with peace. The kind of peace that doesn't need conditions. The kind of peace that says, I no longer need to be someone else to feel worthy. It is a peace born not of control, but of surrender. Not of striving, but of being. And in that peace, you begin to see everything differently. The people who hurt you, they were asleep too. The moments you regret, they were your teachers. The mistakes you made, they were chapters, not definitions. You begin to release the grip. You stop gripping the old narrative. You stop defending your limitations. You stop arguing for the smallness that never fits you. You see, now that your pain didn't make you less, it made you aware. Aware of what you never want to abandon again. Aware of what it means to live truthfully, not conveniently. And so you let go not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. You let go of the people who only knew how to love the mask. You let go of the timelines that were never yours. You let go of the fight to be seen because you finally see yourself. And oh, how holy that is. To see yourself not through the eyes of trauma, not through the lens of performance, but through the gaze of love. You begin to walk differently. Not with arrogance, but with grace. Not with fear, but with reverence. Because you know what it took to get here. You know the darkness you walked through. You know the courage it took to unbury yourself. And so you don't need to convince anyone anymore. You don't need to explain your worth. You simply live it. You embody it quietly, powerfully, authentically. The real you is not loud, but it is radiant. The real you is not perfect, but it is whole. The real you is not finished, but it is free. Free to love without apology. Free to express without fear. Free to create, not to be noticed, but because it brings you joy. And in this freedom, you discover something else. There is no separation between your healing and the healing of the world. Because every time you show up as your true self, you give someone else permission to breathe deeper. Every time you choose peace over performance, you remind others that peace is possible. Every time you stop hiding, you shift the collective story from shame to sovereignty. This is how change happens, not through force, but through authenticity. Not through shouting, but through shining. And the world needs your shine. Not the polished version, not the filtered version, but the raw, real, beautifully human light that only you carry. You are not here to be like everyone else. You are here to be a mirror. A mirror that reflects what is true. A mirror that reminds others of their own light. A mirror that says, look, you never lost yourself. You only stopped looking within. So keep looking within. Keep returning. When the world gets noisy, return. When the doubts grow loud, return. When the pain resurfaces, return. Return to the breath. Return to the now. Return to the place inside you that was never touched by fear, never defined by failure, never dimmed by time. That place is home. That place is where the real you lives. And from that place, everything becomes clear. You don't need to chase what's meant for you. It will find you in your authenticity. You don't need to beg for love, you are love. You don't need to fear the unknown. The unknown is where your soul dances. And as you live from that space, life begins to unfold in divine rhythm. Not always easy, Not always predictable, but always meaningful, always guided, always holy. Because you are no longer walking as someone pretending to be alive. You are walking as someone who has returned not to a version, but to the original, the essence, the truth, the real you, still here, still radiant, still enough. And now that you've returned to the center of your being, you start to witness the world from a place of calm power, no longer tossed by every opinion, no longer shrinking in rooms that once intimidated you. You realize that nothing outside of you can define the truth within you. That freedom is not found in changing your surroundings, but in transforming the way you see. And now you see with the eyes of the soul. You see through illusion. You see past the masks of others and into the essence they've forgotten too. You no longer crave approval because you recognize the futility of trying to be understood in a language that doesn't speak to your truth. You don't resist that either. You bless it and you let it be. This is the maturity of awakening, not just reclaiming your own soul, but learning how to let others walk their own path without judgment. You begin to understand that everyone is buried in some way. Everyone is healing from something. And so instead of resenting the world, you begin to soften toward it. You move from resentment to compassion, from defense to openness, from why don't they see me to I hope they find themselves too. And that shift, it's nothing short of sacred. You begin to live not as a reaction to the world, but as an offering to it. Your presence becomes medicine. Your authenticity becomes a lighthouse. And you don't need to scream it from rooftops, you simply are, because when you are rooted in the real you, your life itself becomes a transmission, a silent teaching, a quiet revolution of light. And with this, something even more powerful begins to happen. You no longer see your past as a curse. You see it as the soil. You see the pain not as the end of your innocence, but as the beginning of your depth. The things that once made you bitter now make you wise. The wounds that once closed your heart now expand it. You've stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And you've started asking, what did this awaken in me? And that question unlocks the door to your soul. You no longer seek healing from the outside in. You don't chase remedies. You return to the healer within. You trust the divine intelligence in your tears. You listen to your body. You believe your intuition. You treat your triggers not as enemies, but as sacred messengers whispering where more light is needed. And you become gentle, not weak gentle. There is a quiet strength and softness, a profound courage and tenderness. You no longer need the armor because truth doesn't fear exposure. You let others think what they want because their perception cannot alter your essence. You walk unshaken because your peace is no longer negotiable. This is where the real living begins. When you are no longer trying to protect a false self, when you are no longer addicted to performance, when you are no longer imprisoned by the past or obsessed with the future, you begin to live from presence. And presence is not a practice, it is a return. The return to now, the return to simplicity, the return to the breath, the body, the beauty of this exact moment. Because the soul only lives now, and now is enough. Always has been, always will be. When you drop into this moment, the illusion of separation dissolves. You see God in the ordinary. You feel grace in your stillness. You remember that there was never a moment when you were truly alone. You may have forgotten, yes, but forgotten doesn't mean forsaken. You look back at the darkest nights and you no longer curse them. You bow to them because those were the nights you cracked open. Those were the nights the illusions began to fall away. Those were the nights you began to hear the whisper behind the noise saying, "Come home." And you did. Not all at once. Not perfectly, but faithfully. And now, you are here not as a shadow, but as a soul. Not as a role, but as a presence. Not as a reaction, but as a being. You live slower now because you're no longer in a race. You breathe deeper because you're no longer holding your worth hostage. You smile more because your joy is no longer conditional. You give without grasping. You love without losing yourself. You create without comparing. You've dropped the heaviness, the story, the struggle, not because life got easier, but because you remembered who you are. And the beautiful irony is this: what the world told you to hide is exactly what makes you whole. Your sensitivity is not a flaw, it is your gateway to empathy. Your softness is not a weakness, it is your truest strength. Your presence is not insignificant, it is the very space where healing begins. You no longer try to be impressive. You now aim to be honest. You no longer chase meaning, you create it by being fully here. And in that presence, you are guided, not by fear, not by ego, but by something quieter, deeper, more ancient, the wisdom of the soul, the whisper of your divine source, the intelligence of love itself. And this is the moment where everything turns. This is the moment you stop looking outward for proof and start looking inward for peace. This is the moment where you become the parent to the child inside who was waiting all along to be loved without condition. This is the moment where forgiveness isn't something you do, it's something you become. A state of being that flows through you effortlessly because you are no longer interested in carrying what was never yours. You choose freedom. Not later, not when it's convenient, but now. And now again. And now again. Because freedom isn't a destination, it's a decision. A decision to be here as you are and know that it is more than enough. And so we arrive at the sacred edge of remembrance, where everything you once sought outside of you is revealed to have lived within you all along. You were not born to chase love, you are love. You were not created to seek light, you radiate it. You were not sent here to gather pieces of yourself. You were sent here whole, radiant, holy, and merely invited to remember. The real you was never gone, just buried. Under layers of fear that were never yours, under beliefs passed down by generations too wounded to know better, under silence you thought would keep you safe. But safety is not found in hiding. It is found in truth. And truth never asks you to be small. You are not a damaged soul in need of fixing. You are an infinite spirit in need of freeing. You do not need permission to return to yourself. You do not need validation to exist. You do not need agreement to be whole. The only requirement is your yes. A wholehearted yes to presence. A gentle yes to truth. A courageous yes to life as it unfiltered, unedited, unrehearsed. This is where the liberation begins. When you stop trying to be lovable and realize you are love, when you stop trying to prove your existence and begin inhabiting it fully, when you stop searching for God in the sky and remember God has always lived inside your breath, your body, your being, and when this knowing settles in your bones, the world no longer has the power to shape you. You become rooted in what cannot be shaken. Not arrogant anchored, not defensive devoted to the truth of your soul, devoted to the peace that no storm can take, devoted to the sacred path of being fully, fiercely, freely you. You begin to walk in the world differently. You speak with softness and certainty. You listen not just with your ears, but with your heart. You love without needing anything in return because your source of love is infinite. And you stop grasping for control because you understand that surrender is the truest form of power. This is where the ego dissolves not in defeat, but in awe, because the ego cannot survive in the presence of truth. And truth is what you are. You no longer hold resentment because you no longer hold yourself hostage. You no longer repeat the story because you no longer identify with the suffering. You've learned that the wound is not your identity. It is the place the light enters. It is not a mark of failure. It is the sign of initiation. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be present, to weep when the heart breaks, to laugh when joy floods in, to sit in silence when words are not enough, to dance even when no one watches, to love even if it means loss, to live even if it means letting go. Because real living is not about certainty, it's about surrender. And surrender is not weakness, it is the ultimate alignment. It is saying, I trust what I cannot see because I know who I am. It is releasing the story that says, I must control everything, and returning to the sacred knowing I am already held. And you are held by a universe that speaks in synchronicities. Held by a divine presence that has never left your side. Held by the breath that continues moment after moment, asking nothing but your return. So come back again and again. Come back to the sacred now. Come back to your quiet knowing. Come back to your soul. Because no matter how far you've wandered, no matter how long you've been buried, the truth is still waiting with open arms. It is not bitter. It is not angry. It is not impatient. It is still here. Still whole. Still you. And now you are ready not to become something new, but to unbecome everything that was never real. To shed, to release, to return. And in that return, you risen not above others, but above illusion. Not in ego, but in essence. Not in perfection, but in peace. The world may not understand this version of you. Let it not matter. Because understanding is not your mission, embodiment is. When you live as your truth, you are the mirror the world forgot it needed. When you walk as your soul, you are the prayer the world didn't know it had spoken. And when you return to yourself, you return to all. You begin to live not as a separate being, but as an extension of life itself. The trees become your teachers. The stars become your reminders. The silence becomes your sanctuary. And love pure, boundless love becomes your way of being. Not something you give, not something you do, but something you are. You are the love you've searched for. You are the light you've longed to see. You are the peace you once thought was lost. And now you remember fully, completely. Finally, the real you was never gone, just buried. But you, my dear, have risen, and the world will never be the same. There is a quiet place within you that has never moved, never chased, never feared, and never doubted. It is not stirred by applause, nor silenced by rejection. It is not confused by your pain, nor distracted by your plans. It does not race ahead or fall behind. This place, this sacred stillness is your soul, and it waits for you. The mind is a wanderer, a traveler with no map and too many destinations. It clings to clocks and calendars, forecasts and fears. It builds futures from memory and past from imagination. It thrives on noise. It is addicted to answers, yet it rarely pauses to ask the real questions. It fills your inner world with commentary, comparison, and concern, all in the name of safety, identity, and progress. But what it truly fears is stillness. Because in stillness, the mind loses its throne. In silence, the ego becomes transparent. And when all the stories fade, you are faced with what has always been the radiant presence of the soul, undisturbed, eternal, whole. The soul is never lost. You are never disconnected. What happens is simpler than all the narratives your mind spins to explain the ache inside. The mind wanders and the soul waits. It waits not in judgment, but in love. It doesn't punish you for your detours, your distractions, your dramas. It does not label your delay as failure. The soul is the great witness, the candle that never goes out, no matter how dark the mind storms become. And when you tire of searching, when you finally grow weary of being everything for everyone, it is there quietly glowing, saying, "Welcome home." You see, your suffering is not the result of the world. It is not the fault of your past or the flaws you believe you carry. Your suffering comes from identification, from believing you are the noise in your mind rather than the light in your being. The mind says, "You are broken, so fix." The soul says, "You are whole, remember." The mind screams, "Run faster, try harder, control more." The soul whispers, "Be still." The mind asks, "Who am I?" in their eyes. The soul asks, "Who am I?" without their eyes. And so the great journey of awakening is not about adding more knowledge, more success, more achievements. It is about subtracting what never belonged to you. It is not about becoming someone, but unbecoming the false ideas that kept you from being. The soul does not shout because it does not need to. Truth never argues with illusion. Light does not battle the dark, it simply shines, and the dark disappears. Your soul does not need to win your attention. It simply waits until you exhaust your addiction to wandering. And oh, how we wander. We wander through roles and titles, forgetting that identity is not essence. We wander through relationships, hoping to find in another what we've forgotten within. We wander through religions and philosophies, mistaking the finger pointing to the moon for the moon itself. We wander through time, trying to resurrect the past or rehearse the future, yet missing the only place the soul lives, now. You cannot arrive where you already are. You cannot earn what you already embody. You cannot chase what has never left you. But the mind will try. It is a master of distractions dressed as desires. It tells you, just one more goal, just one more apology, just one more dollar, one more compliment, one more answer, and then you'll be okay. But your soul does not play that game. It already knows you are okay. Not in the way the world defines it, not in the way the mind demands it, but in a higher, deeper, everlasting sense. You are okay because you are a spark of the infinite. You are okay because you are not the noise. You are the silence behind it. You are okay because you are not the body that breaks or the thoughts that change. You are the awareness that holds them both. But don't expect the mind to applaud this revelation. It thrives on urgency. It fears peace because peace makes it irrelevant. It cannot control what it cannot understand, and it cannot understand what it cannot divide. The soul cannot be divided. It is not part of you, it is what you are. Your mind is a tool, sharp, fast, necessary, but it was never meant to drive the vehicle. It was meant to serve the heart, not rule the being. When the mind leads, you end up exhausted, even when you succeed. When the soul leads, there is rest, even in motion. There is clarity, even amidst uncertainty. There is love, even in the presence of pain. The mind collects. The soul releases. The mind tries to define you. The soul invites you to dissolve into the undefinable. The mind wants answers. The soul becomes the question. What if the peace you're seeking is not found in changing your life, but in changing your relationship to your thoughts? What if your inner war ends the moment you stop believing every fearful thing your mind tells you? What if the path back to joy is not a climb, but a surrender? Surrender, not as weakness, but as alignment. Not as giving up, but as waking up. Surrender to this moment, to this breath, to this eternal now, where the soul waits in quiet presence. Where nothing needs to be fixed, solved, or figured out, only felt, only allowed, only witnessed. In this sacred space, miracles are not performed, they are remembered. You are not here to become something other than what you are. You are here to realize what you've never stopped being. The soul never left. It's just been patiently waiting for the mind to stop chasing clouds and notice the sky. The sky that has always held you, the sky that never fought the storm yet never lost its nature. You don't need more time to be free. You need less mind to notice you already are. Let the mind wander, if it must, but don't follow it. Witness it, the way you would watch leaves float down a stream. Let them pass. You are not the leaf. You are not the stream. You are the stillness beneath the current, the spaciousness behind the motion. You are not what moves. You are what allows movement. And in that realization, something within you will break beautifully. The grip will loosen, the story will soften. And for the first time, perhaps in years, you'll feel it. That quiet radiance, that sacred presence, that home you never truly left. The soul was never impatient. It knew this moment would come. It knew that one day, after all the proving and pushing and pretending, you would fall to your knees, not in despair, but in awe, in surrender, in remembrance. And when you do, the soul does not say, "Where have you been?" It says, "I've been here all along." Because it never needed you to change, it only waited for you to see. And so the return begins not in lightning strikes or grand awakenings, but in the simple turning of attention inward, in the pause between thoughts, in the breath you didn't notice you were holding, in the moment you finally allow yourself to stop running, not because the world has quieted, but because you have. There is no need to chase enlightenment as if it were some distant treasure buried beneath lifetimes of mistakes. It is here, now, humming beneath the surface of your striving. It is in the stillness between your words. It is in the space behind your eyes. It is in the warmth you feel when you stop bracing against life and allow it to wash through you like a river returning to the ocean. The soul does not speak in volume. It speaks in presence. It does not compete for your attention because it knows it cannot be erased, only ignored, and even your ignorance of it cannot diminish its truth. The soul is not altered by your forgetting. It is only hidden behind the clouds of your becoming. But becoming is the way of the mind always trying to become and never quite satisfied with simply being. The mind wants to arrive. The soul wants to dissolve. The mind says, "I am not enough yet." The soul whispers, "You were never less than divine." And that whisper is all it takes, a single silent breath of eternity breaking through the illusion of separation. One moment of deep remembering, and lifetimes of fear begin to fade like shadows at sunrise. You do not need to fix the noise. You only need to return to the silence beneath it. You do not need to control your thoughts. You need only to stop obeying them. Can you feel it now? That subtle warmth in your chest when you let go of trying to understand everything? That sacred exhale when you stop negotiating with your pain and simply sit beside it as a friend who needs no explanation? That is the soul. That is the home your mind forgot it had. There is no need to punish the mind for wandering. It is what it does. It was shaped by the world to do so. It learned early that love must be earned, that safety must be managed, that joy must be delayed. But none of that was true. It was merely inherited, a costume passed down from ancestors too tired to question the script. But you are here now, awake enough to feel the costume tightening, aware enough to know that what you've been calling you is mostly habit, brave enough to shed the mask, even if only for a moment, and feel the vastness underneath. The soul has always been vast. It is not interested in your resume. It does not measure worth by performance. It does not care how much money you have. How many followers approve of your image? Or how many tasks you completed before sunrise? The soul is only interested in one thing, your freedom, not external freedom, but the kind that cannot be revoked, the freedom to be yourself without apology, without disguise, without fear. When the mind runs, the soul waits. It waits like an ancient tree, unmoving, unjudging, deeply rooted in eternal presence. It does not beg you to return. It knows you will. Because no matter how far the mind wanders, it always tires of its own noise. Eventually, the seeking becomes heavy, the striving turns hollow, and the soul, ever still, becomes magnetic. Not because it changes, but because you finally remember how good it feels to come home. That is the true miracle, not transformation, but remembrance. To remember who you were before the world taught you to forget. To remember what it feels like to live without needing permission. To laugh without waiting for the right moment. To cry without justification. To love without walls. You do not need to heal by fixing yourself. You heal by letting go of what was never truly you. The false identities, the limiting stories, the inherited fears, these are not your soul's language. They are the noise the mind learned to speak in a world that had forgotten how to listen. But you can listen again, you can tune back in, you can place your hand on your heart and feel what never left you. The soul waits not in the future, not in the next accomplishment, but right here in the stillness between this breath and the next. The mind will argue. It will insist that stillness is laziness, that presence is unproductive, that peace is earned only after every box is checked. But the soul laughs not with mockery, but with love. Because the soul knows that your worth is not a goal to achieve. It is a truth to reclaim. And when you do, when you stop trying to earn rest and simply rest, when you stop searching for proof, and instead allow yourself to feel, when you stop waiting for a better version of yourself and start embracing this very moment as sacred, something shifts. You begin to hear the soul's voice again. Not as thunder, but as wind. Not as command, but as clarity. Not as pressure, but as permission. You begin to move differently, not out of fear, but out of alignment. Not chasing, but allowing. Not performing, but expressing. And life, which once felt like a battle, begins to feel like a dance. You start to see the world not as an enemy to conquer, but as a mirror reflecting your beliefs, your wounds, your longing to awaken. Every challenge becomes an invitation. Every loss becomes a letting go. Every silence becomes a sanctuary. And in this sacred awareness, you stop reacting and start responding. Because you are no longer a victim of your thoughts. You are the observer, the witness. The vast space in which thought arises and falls like waves on an infinite ocean. And the ocean does not fear the waves. It simply holds them all. The joy, the sorrow, the longing, the grace. The ocean is not afraid of the storm because it knows the storm will pass. It knows that nothing can touch its depth. You are that depth. You are not your thoughts. You are the one aware of your thoughts. You are not your roles, your wounds, or your history. You are the awareness in which all of these things unfold. When the mind forgets, the soul remembers. When the mind doubts, the soul knows. When the mind contracts, the soul expands. And no matter how long you forget or how far you drift, the soul does not lose patience. It does not shame you. It simply waits with infinite grace for the moment you remember. And so the question is not, how do I find my soul? The question is, what am I willing to let go of so I can see it again? Let go of the need to be understood. Let go of the belief that your worth must be proven. Let go of the story that healing must look like strength. Let go of the idea that you must do more to be more. The soul waits for your return, not through effort, but through surrender. And in surrender, you don't lose control, you lose the illusion that you ever needed it. You begin to trust life again. Not blindly, but deeply. Not as a plan to execute, but as a mystery to be embraced. You start to listen to the inner pull that defies logic, but feels like truth. You begin to speak less from memory and more from presence. You stop performing peace and start embodying it. And you realize the mind was never the enemy. It was just scared. It was taught to protect you by controlling everything. But now, the soul is here to teach you another way, a way of trust, of flow, of coming back to the moment where everything already exists. Let the mind wander, it will. But know this, you no longer have to follow. Stay with the soul, stay with the breath, stay with the moment. And in that stillness, you will find what you've been seeking all along, not outside you, but as you. You begin to realize that freedom is not the absence of challenges, it is the absence of identification with them. The wind still blows, the storms still pass. The world still moves in cycles of gain and loss, joy and grief, love and letting go. But you remain grounded, not in outcomes, but in awareness. This is the subtle power of the soul. It does not shield you from life, it opens you to it. It does not eliminate pain, it transforms your relationship with it. And in that transformation, you begin to touch the sacred truth beneath every wound, that nothing is wasted, and everything is here to bring you home to yourself. Even your wandering has meaning. Even your forgetting has purpose. The detour is part of the design, for without the mind's noise, how would you recognize the soul's silence? Without the ache of disconnection, how would you treasure the sweetness of remembrance? Without the illusion, how would you ever awaken to the truth? And the truth is this, you were never broken. You only believed you were. You were never alone. You only thought you were. You were never less than whole. You only forgot how to see it. The soul has never once doubted your light, only waited for you to stop dimming it for the comfort of others. You do not owe anyone your dimming. You were not born to be digestible. You were born to be radiant, to be real, to be rooted in the unwavering knowing of who and what you are. A divine expression of a limitless source, choosing to experience itself in human form, and in that form there is forgetting, but there is also remembering, and every moment is an invitation to return. You return through presence, through breath, through compassion, first for yourself, then for all things. You return by forgiving yourself for believing the lies the world sold you, that your worth depended on performance, that your body defined your beauty, that your pain disqualified your power. None of that is real. What is real cannot be taken from you. What is real lives beneath the labels. It shines through your eyes when you're not trying to impress anyone. It pulses in your chest when you tell the truth. Even when your voice shakes, it reveals itself not when you're perfect, but when you're present. And the more present you become, the more you notice how much of your life has been lived in reaction. Not from your soul, but from your wounds. Trying to prove you're enough. Trying to avoid rejection. Trying to hold together the image of someone who's okay, even when you're breaking inside. But breaking is not a failure, it is a doorway. It is what happens when the armor you've outgrown begins to crack. It is the sound of your soul reminding you that you were not meant to live inside a prison of expectations. And so the cracks appear, and through them, light pours in. The light doesn't ask for credentials. It does not request your resume of suffering or success. It enters the moment you stop resisting it. And it begins to show you the truth that your mind could never fully grasp, that you are not here to be fixed, you are here to be freed. Freed from the tyranny of your own thoughts. Freed from the identity built on wounds. Freed from the voice that says, you must become, when the soul already knows, you already are. And in this freedom, you rediscover a sacred simplicity. Life begins to breathe through you, not because you're trying, but because you've stopped obstructing it. Peace returns, not because you fought for it, but because you stopped insisting it come a certain way. Love emerges not as a transaction, but as your natural state, because love is what you are when the stories fall away. And when you live from that place, not sometimes, but consistently, courageously, everything changes. Not necessarily outside, but inside. Your reactions become responses. Your fear becomes clarity. Your protection becomes openness. Your life becomes less about managing and more about allowing. Allowing yourself to feel what you feel, allowing others to be where they are without needing to control them. Allowing life to unfold without demanding that it bend to your will. This is not passivity, this is trust. This is alignment. This is what it means to walk with the soul, leading the way, to move not from fear, but from knowing. And when the mind wanders, because it will, you do not shame it. You simply return. Gently, quietly, with compassion. Again and again and again. Until returning becomes your practice. Until presence becomes your path. Until you no longer confuse your thoughts with yourself. The mind will tell you, this is too slow. The soul knows, this is eternal. The mind will scream, what if it all falls apart? The soul whispers, let it. What is real will remain. The mind will say, you must do more. The soul says, you must remember. And when you remember, you don't rise as someone new, you rise as someone true. That is the purpose of this path. Not to escape life, but to enter it fully from the center of your being. Not to deny the world, but to meet it with eyes that see beyond form. Not to reach enlightenment as a destination, but to embody it moment by moment, breath by breath, as your natural state. The soul waits not at the top of the mountain, but at the base of your breath. Not in some distant afterlife, but in the heartbeat you keep ignoring. Not in perfection, but in presence. So let the mind wander. Let it dream, worry, narrate, and debate. Let it dance its dance. But do not follow unless it serves your peace. Instead, turn inward. Listen. Breathe. And find, again and again, the place within that never moved. The mind wanders. The soul waits, and in your stillness they meet. There is a sacred intelligence in stillness. One the mind cannot calculate. It is not the stillness of doing nothing, it is the stillness of being everything. It is the awareness that does not rush, because it already contains the entire moment. It is the spaciousness behind every movement, the quiet behind every word, the presence beneath every heartbeat. When you begin to live from this place, your life ceases to be a reaction to circumstances. It becomes a reflection of consciousness. You are no longer chasing the external to soothe the internal. You are no longer bargaining with the universe to feel worthy. You simply are. Whole. Now. Enough. And in this state of being, something miraculous happens. Life begins to mirror your alignment. Not always in ways the mind expects, but always in ways the soul recognizes. You stop attracting lessons to wake you up because you are already awake. You stop calling in chaos to force you to surrender because you are already surrendered. You stop seeking from lack and start allowing from abundance. This is the essence of creation, not effort, but alignment. Not struggle, but surrender to the truth that you already carry within. You are not here to prove your power. You are here to remember it. Because true power is not domination, it is embodiment. It is not force, it is presence. It is not loud, it is rooted. And it flows naturally when the mind bows to the soul, when the wandering surrenders to the waiting. The soul is not interested in outcomes. It is concerned only with truth. It does not ask, what can I get? But what can I be? And in being, everything is already included. You were not born to be a prisoner of your mind. You were born to be a portal for grace. And grace is not earned, it is allowed. It flows through the cracks of your surrender. It enters when the guards of your ego grow weary. It does not knock, it does not shout. It waits just like the soul, patiently, lovingly, faithfully. There is no punishment in the delay, only invitation. Every moment you spend wandering is another moment preparing your return. Every illusion chased makes the truth more vibrant when you finally see it. And so the game is not to defeat the mind, it is to transcend it. Not to banish thought, but to see thought for what it is. A ripple on the surface of the ocean, never touching the depth. You are that depth. Not the mask you wear to be liked. Not the voice you mimic to be accepted. Not the pain you carry as proof of your strength. You are the timeless, eternal presence in which all things arise and dissolve. You are the still point in a turning world. And the more you rest in that awareness, the more life simplifies. Not because the outer becomes easier, but because the inner becomes clear. You stop resisting what is. You stop grasping for what isn't. You stop apologizing for being you. Because the soul does not apologize, it only shines. And when you align with that radiance, your presence becomes medicine. Not because you fix others, but because your very being becomes a permission slip for them to remember their own. There is no greater gift you can give the world than your own remembrance. Not through performance, but through presence. Not through convincing, but through embodying. So pause, breathe, feel. Feel the place inside you that has never been wounded, never been afraid, never been separate. Feel the space behind your thoughts, the silence underneath your name. Feel the peace that arises not from control, but from surrender. Feel the soul that never left, only waited. Waited for you to stop searching for light outside of yourself. Waited for you to stop earning love that has always been yours. Waited for you to stop pretending, performing, defending, and finally just be. The mind wanders. The soul waits. But the moment you remember, they unite, and you are no longer divided. You are no longer seeking. You are no longer waiting. You are home. And now, you arrive at the place you never truly left, the sacred center of your being. You don't arrive through effort. You don't arrive by conquering the mind or mastering some higher plane. You arrive by remembering, by releasing, by finally laying down the heavy need to understand it all. This is the quiet miracle. That home was never somewhere you had to go. It was always where you are, always beneath the noise, always beneath the names and labels and plans. The soul has never once abandoned you, only waited for your return with the gentleness of a dawn that does not rush and the strength of a mountain that does not move. And maybe that's the point. Not to run faster or try harder or dig deeper, but to become still enough to feel what has always been present, to soften enough to let the light in, to trust enough to let go. The mind will not stop offering its stories. Let it. The world will not stop moving. Bless it. But you are learning to be the one who watches, the one who witnesses, the one who lives from the sacred now where nothing is missing. Because nothing ever was. Your worth is not a question to be answered. It is a truth to be lived. Your peace is not a goal to be earned. It is a frequency to return to. And your soul is not a destination. It is the stillness within your very breath. Here, now, whispering, you are already what you seek. So breathe. Let the moment hold you. Let the presence carry you. Let the wandering settle into waiting, and the waiting into knowing. And in that knowing, walk gently through this life. Not as someone trying to become, but as someone who remembers. Not as a seeker, but as a presence. Not as a fixer, but as a light. Because you are no longer chasing truth. You are living it, and the soul is no longer waiting. It is finally walking with you. Home, always, now, forever.